The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Uganda, thanks for tuning in to the Alternative Dig Talk TV. This is the Mighty Drive, and we always come in here for this initial segment of the Mighty Global News Updates, a moment where we take you through stories that are hitting headlines this morning. It is the 12th of November 2025. We thank you for being part of us. And if you are watching us for the very first time, tap that subscribe button and join thousands and tens of thousands of people who follow and subscribe to this mighty platform that prioritizes matters of national importance. Now, we are sorry for coming in a little bit late, but let me take you through some of the outstanding stories that are hitting headlines this morning. Now, following the arrest and abduction of the two Kenyan nationals who had come in Uganda to campaign for the NUP team and Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, we learned that these people had been detained by the security operatives here in the country. However, all government institutions had said they never knew where these people were, although many people were calling out the government institutions to release these people previously. But the people, including the officials in the government, the security institutions, were saying they never knew the whereabouts of these two people, Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo. But recently, President Museveni came out and cleared the air, saying that they had these two individuals in detention due to President Museveni says they had come to teach Ugandans on how to do or to promote violence in their country and how to protest, that they were experts in conducting riots, and they had come now to teach the NUP team and all the Ugandans on how to riot in the country, something the president says as Uganda they are not ready to prioritize, and whoever comes in to do that faces hard time, that whoever comes to destabilize peace in the country, Uganda, has to face it difficulty. Now, President Museveni said they were being retained in what he termed as a fridge, that they were put in a fridge or they were detained for those charges. But following the calls from Kenya, from some top officials in the government of Kenya, President Museveni decided to now release these two back to their country. Now, several people came out to criticize the government, saying that this shows that even other people that went missing, including Sam Mugumya and John Bosco Chibalama, could also be in detention somewhere, much as the government has been denying that they don't know these people. That this is a time where Ugandans should wake up and now fight for their rights. Otherwise, the government could continue doing this if the institutions came out and said they never knew the whereabouts of these two Kenyan nationals, and now the president comes out saying they were here detained. There was the habeas corpus order that was calling for immediate release of these two individuals if they were in any government detention. But the government prosecutors said they never had these people in any detention, but now the president came in and surprised the people, saying they had them. And these two nationals say they were detained by the Special Forces Command. Now several people have come out to criticize this, saying that it shows that our country, Uganda, could be sliding backwards in terms of democracy and respect for human rights, including lawyers saying that this was done illegally because there is no known detention in the Special Forces Command, and the SFC is not known by law to be doing that. Now, that marks the end of the mighty global news updates. However, we always give you a special moment to know what happened on a day like this in history. Keneth Rwemirembe Rubatsimbira, the princess, is already here in studio to take you throughout the entire mighty drive with our guests. A good morning for now. Today in history, November 12, 1974, marks a significant day in the United Nations stance against apartheid in South Africa. The United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution suspending South Africa from participating in its work due to the country's racist apartheid policies.
Business or owning land in white areas was banned. There were separate public facilities, transport and schools. Interracial marriage was banned. Many had no right to citizenship and were regarded as aliens in major cities. Instead, they were made citizens of Bantustans, homelands scattered throughout South Africa.
This move was a culmination of years of international pressure and condemnation of the apartheid regime, segregation and discrimination against the majority black population. The apartheid regime, which had been in power since 1948, had implemented a range of laws and policies designed to maintain the white minority rule and suppress the rights of black South Africans. The regime's policies were widely condemned by the international community, and the UN had repeatedly called on South Africa to abandon its apartheid policies and adopt a more inclusive and equitable system of government. Despite these calls, the apartheid regime had shown little willingness to reform, and the international community was increasingly taking action to isolate South Africa and pressure the government to change its ways. The suspension of South Africa from the UN General Assembly was one of the key measures taken by the international community to achieve this goal. The resolution suspending South Africa was passed with 91 votes in favor, 22 against, and 19 abstentions. The vote was a significant blow to the apartheid regime, which had been increasingly isolated on the world stage. The regime had argued that its policies were a domestic matter and that the UN had no right to interfere in its internal affairs. However, the UN and the international community saw apartheid as a threat to international peace and security, and believed that it was their duty to take action to bring an end to the regime's racist policies. This meant that South Africa would not be able to participate in debates or vote on resolutions, limiting its ability to influence international policy. Despite this setback, the apartheid regime continued to defy the international community and refused to abandon its policies. However, this suspension marked a significant turning point in the global struggle against apartheid. Over the coming years, the international community would continue to take action against the apartheid regime. Economic sanctions would be imposed, diplomatic relations would be severed, and the regime would face increasing isolation on the world stage. The suspension of South Africa from the UN General Assembly was just one part of this broader effort to bring an end to apartheid and promote human rights and dignity in South Africa. The apartheid era ultimately came to an end in the early 1990s when the South African government led by F.W. de Klerk began to implement reforms and move towards a more inclusive and democratic system of government. Nelson Mandela, the anti-apartheid leader, was released from prison in 1990 and democratic elections were held in 1994. The elections marked the end of apartheid and the beginning of a new era for South Africa. The country was welcomed back into the international community and South Africa rejoined the UN General Assembly. As we reflect on the suspension of South Africa from the UN General Assembly, we are reminded of the importance of working towards a world where all people can live in dignity and respect. Keneth Rubatsimbira, Dig Talk TV.